Thank you for allowing me to be here. Thank you for that introduction. My name is Nicole Mouskondis, and I have a couple of goals today. If you can leave here and I have taught you a little bit about the hospitality industry, the restaurant food service industry that you didn't know before, then I will feel accomplished. And if you can leave here pondering a career in that industry that you never thought you would have perhaps thought of before, then I will feel accomplished today. So those are my two main goals. We're going to talk about Welcome to Hell's Kitchen. Has anybody ever seen Gordon Ramsay or heard of Gordon Ramsay? So is that your idea when you first think about Hell's Kitchen? Is that what comes to mind? Has anybody here seen The Bear? The show, okay, yeah. I wish I could tell you that those were like over-dramatized, fictional stories about what happens behind the scenes in the back of the house in our industry. But it's kind of real. And so it's funny, when The Bear came out, a lot of our customers were like seriously not able to get through the entire series because it was like PTSD for them. They were like, oh my gosh, this is too real. This is the world that we live in. So where is Hell's Kitchen, and why would you want to contemplate a career in an industry where, I say it's the hospitality industry that is kind of inhospitable right now, maybe more than ever, given the pandemic and some other things. We're going to talk about the impact that current conditions have on our industry. So where is Hell's Kitchen? It literally is any kitchen where the magic happens at any one of our customer facilities. Our customers are restaurants, schools, nursing homes, hotels, hospitals, correctional facilities, anybody that has institutional food service needs. The difference between institutional food service and retail, we're going to talk a little bit about that as well. We sell large quantities of product. If you go to a grocery store, you're a consumer, you might go in and get a can of green beans, and the can of green beans looks like a can of green beans. You might get a family-sized can of green beans, which is a little bit bigger. Anybody here been in food service before, worked at a restaurant? Okay. Have you seen a number 10 can? Do you know what a number 10 can is? Really large quantities, and we sell cases of those, not a lot of eaches. So a little bit different in terms of the pack sizes, quantities, and everything than on the retail side. Our publicly traded companies that are our competition, you might have seen Sysco, US Food Service are kind of the big two that are in our space. Hopefully you've seen our trucks driving around town here. Hopefully you've seen, even on this campus, our trucks deliver to outlets that are at the University of Utah. So we are a broadline distributor, which means we sell everything to those customers that I just mentioned, from everything from soup to nuts. Everything, we have about 15,000 items that we stock here in Salt Lake City. We have a distribution center, our headquarters are here. We have a distribution center in Las Vegas, and we have one in Reno. And we are Intermountain West, so we are a regional distributor. We actually travel a lot of miles to get to customers in 8 different states from those 3 different distribution centers. So you can imagine, if you start thinking about the cost, you start thinking about fuel, you start thinking about all those trucks on the road. These are the other reasons why this industry is a difficult industry. In addition to Sysco and US Food Service, that are the publicly traded broadliners in our space, similar to us, we have niche distributors. And so it's not just the competition of the big publicly traded companies, but you've probably seen some trucks around town, the local ones here, Charlie's Produce, there's Kazamakis Produce, there's Wasatch Meats, there's Fog River Seafood. You've probably, maybe you haven't seen them, but you'll start recognize them now as you are driving down the street. So for every category that we sell, which is everything from fresh meat, produce, industrial equipment, chemicals, supplies, disposables, paper products, every single one of those categories that we sell, we have niche competitors in that space too. So it makes the industry very competitive. It makes the selling job very, very difficult, but it's super fun. You're probably wondering, why do I have a smile on my face talking about this? Because I love the industry. I obviously have a bias. I love our company, but I think it's a lot of fun. And I do think people like Gordon Ramsay and the Food Network specifically have helped to elevate the awareness of our industry, how much fun it is. And my father-in-law used to always say, food and drink bring the world together. And I think, especially in this time right now, we need things, more things that bring us together. You can talk about the weather for 5 minutes, but when you're talking about food, when you're eating food, literally breaking bread with somebody, it brings you together. It crosses all ethnicities and cultures and brings people together. So that's part of why I love the industry in general. We are B2B sales. Everybody here is in a sales program, so these are acronyms that are familiar with, right? Okay, so business to business as opposed to direct to consumer. Our customers are not the end user. The end user would be you as a consumer going into a restaurant and participating. We sell to the restaurant or to those other institutions that I mentioned. We are also the last mile, meaning we don't manufacture any product. We aggregate all of the orders that the customers give us, and we store them in our warehouse. We have to bring them in, we have to aggregate the orders, and then we have to get the trucks loaded and delivered to that last mile. So getting the customer the right product at the right price at the right time, at the right place. So we are very important in the whole supply chain of the customer world. And it's interesting because not a lot of people really knew what we did before the pandemic happened. A lot of people, you knew that your favorite restaurant maybe was closed, right? But nobody really, including people up on Capitol Hill, didn't really understand, why are the distributors in trouble throughout the pandemic? Don't they just get their groceries from the grocery store? Like, why is it a problem? So a whole lot of education happened during the pandemic, which actually could have been maybe a little bit of a silver lining. People understand and suddenly are interested in, where does my food come from? How come I can no longer get the products that I used to have? How many of you go to a restaurant now and the menu looks different? Your favorite restaurant, maybe you can't get things that used to be on the menu that are no longer available. Anybody see that? Okay, yeah. All right, so I mentioned the role of the distributor, exactly that process that I just talked about. We buy products, we source products direct from manufacturers from all over the world. We bring products in. We warehouse them, and we do sell to some retailers as well, but the end consumer for us is the operators, the owners of those locations. Wholesalers in general, a little bit different from the retailers. We do sell against and have competition in the wholesale space that does not deliver primarily. So if you go to a Costco, if you go to Sam's Club, they do have some delivery for business options, but for the most part, those are cash and carry. They are considered wholesalers, but they don't do all the functions that we do, which is all of the transportation, all of the market information. If you go into a Costco, you're not going to be in front of people who are giving you market trends and insights and data and things like that. So we do provide a little bit different of a service, and I think that's part of what makes us unique as a wholesaler. So let's talk about the pandemic for a second. Everybody was impacted by the pandemic. Our industry, $900 billion industry. In fact, the National Restaurant Association came out with some data right in the middle of the pandemic, again, trying to educate people on Capitol Hill, to help not just the restaurant operators stay in business through the pandemic, but to help the distributors and everybody else that was part of that ecosystem. And I think it was something like 96% of all people, of all executives working in Fortune 500 positions had some experience in the restaurant industry. You all raised, a bunch of you raised your hand just a minute ago when I said how many of you had experience working at a restaurant, whether it's a McDonald's or whether it is a barista or a hostess or a server or whatever. This industry is important to a lot of people. This is where people gather. This is our social aspect. And so it's an important industry, not to mention the fact that we feed people, right? And we bring people together. As I mentioned, food and drink brings the world together. More than 15 million jobs were lost at the beginning of the pandemic. There was a quit rate of that increased by more than 10%. The restaurant industry is famous for having a lot of turnover. It's a hard industry. If you're constantly dealing with customers that are not happy, and it's difficult, what we call the back of the house, which is the Hell's Kitchen part of things, the back of the house, it's difficult. And I think the one thing that I struggle with when I've got applicants coming in and they have gone to culinary school, they get a little disillusioned because they've seen the Food Network and they see the Gordon Ramsays of the world and all of the flash and the glamour of Bobby Flay and Giada and whomever else they've seen on the Food Network, and they think that's what it is. They don't see what it took to get them there. How many grueling hours of standing on your feet, being in a hot kitchen, smelling like the food, having to expedite orders, having to take, it's a tough, tough job. And so they get a little disillusioned, and in some ways, we are the beneficiary of people who love the industry, who are self-professed foodies, who want to have an opportunity to have a career but not work behind the scenes in the kitchen anymore, or not do, other aspects of the industry. How many people in here are foodies? Would you consider yourself a foodie? Okay. You love food? You love trying different kinds of food? Okay, I love it. Awesome. The work from home dynamic really impacted operators. If you think about, particularly in downtown areas all across America, where there were thriving, bustling work spaces, and those customers would have thriving lunch business. Not so much anymore as people started working from home. So many unfilled jobs. Cost of goods went up through the roof because we couldn't get product in. Inflation, of course, impacted our operators. And inflation, not just in terms of the cost of goods sold, but like you think about all of the other things that got inflated. Wage inflation, all the services, all the insurance fees, everything went through the roof during the pandemic. And then, of course, delivery and takeout services. How many people here would prefer or primarily use third-party DoorDash, Uber Eats, whatever, as opposed to going to a restaurant, more so now than you did before the pandemic? Some? Okay. Still a convenience, right? And as somebody in the industry, we kind of were sitting back for the first couple of years saying, is this a phenomenon? Is this something that's going to stick? Is it going to stay? And it's primarily here to stay because of the convenience factor. People are actually going to restaurants and they're bringing food home, or they are having it delivered and eating in their own space, but they don't necessarily want to go and eat in the restaurant anymore. So that changes the mentality of restaurants too. Do they need the overhead anymore? Do they need all that space, all of that in-dining space anymore? Probably not. So you're going to start seeing some changes with restaurants doing some remodeling, new restaurants that get built in a smaller footprint, and it's all because the customer, the consumer preferences have changed. What was the impact to us, the distributor? Obviously, supply chain. I think it's funny because supply chain has always existed. This is what we do, right? We're sourcing product and getting it through the workflow from A to Z. And suddenly, the buzzword of supply chain became a big deal during the pandemic. People, everybody, regardless of what industry they were in, started recognizing that it was hard to get products from one place to another. For us, if you think about a lot of our non-food items, we sourced from China. Gloves, disposable items, trash cans, things like that. We used to put them on a container that cost us $3,300 to get the container here. Suddenly, through the pandemic, it was the $3,300 container went to $38,000. And not only did it go up that much, but we couldn't get the product. It was sitting at the ports forever, couldn't be unloaded, couldn't be. So we're telling our customers as they're trying to order, particularly things like gloves, which they needed during the pandemic. That was a requirement. We couldn't get them. So really, really difficult time for us. Our cost of goods went through the roof. Of course, inflation of products and inflation that I mentioned everywhere else, we had the same impact. Cost of fuel went through the roof. And you can imagine, I just said, we've got 3 different distribution facilities, but from every given facility, in all 4 directions, we are traveling 700-ish miles, at 750 miles sometimes at the maximum, in all 4 directions. It's a lot of miles and a lot of expense when you're talking about fuel. There was a driver shortage. There still is a driver shortage that's happening right now. And for our industry, compounded by the fact that you heard about the driver shortages, mostly the over-the-road drivers that were trying to get those products from A to B, whatever. Our drivers have a unique profile that they not only have to be able to have the CDL license, they have to actually be able to unload the vehicle, take it into the customer, put it away where the customer wants it, and then have a personality that allows them to have customer service skills. So it's not just sitting behind the truck and driving, it's more than that. So our driver shortage, our applicant pool was shrunk even further, so it was difficult. And then cyber security, has always been an issue for a lot of companies, but during the pandemic, particularly difficult. The 3 types of customers that we have: territory customers, multi-unit, non-commercial. Territory is what we call mom and pop restaurants, your independent favorite restaurant that you see. Multi-unit accounts, which are customers that have more than 1 location, typically 5 or more in our case, and sometimes thousands if they're national accounts like Burger King, Subway, Panda. We have those contracts for our geography for those types of national accounts. Multi-unit regional accounts would be like Arctic Circle, Crown Burger. Those would be familiar to you. We also service those accounts. And then non-commercial is healthcare, education, and correctional facilities. We have sales reps that handle each of those different types of customers. Typically, in those territory sales, we sort of segregate the profiles of our salespeople into hunters, gatherers, and support. You guys, is this familiar to you, terminology as well? So if you're going out and you're beating the street and trying to open up new accounts, you have to be a hunter. You have to be aggressive. You have to be somebody who's not afraid to cold call. You have to be someone who's not afraid to absolutely, get in there, right? Account executives who are handling our contracted business typically are more of the maintenance type of salespeople. They're managing the integrity of our contracts. They're managing the relationship with the customer. They're on contracts, so it's more of a longer term thing. They're not every single day fighting for that order like you are in territory sales. And then our inside sales and our drivers are both support. They're the face of the company that the customer sees. In fact, sometimes our drivers see our customers more than our sales reps do or anybody else in the organization. So I always tell people everybody in our organization is in sales. Whether you are selling to the end user or to somebody who you are collaborating with in the organization, we are also interdependent on one another. We all have to have sales skills. So who are your favorite customer? Who are our customers? I mentioned this. Where do you find them? Your favorite places to eat, on the internet, dining out guides, reservation apps. Chamber of Commerce has openings all the time, of new business licenses that are being applied for. And of course, referrals. You guys have probably seen some sorts of sales funnels, no different in our industry in terms of what it looks like. So I'll breeze through that. Sales cycle that we talk to our new salespeople about in particular is the cycle that a customer goes through in terms of, do they even know who we are? At Nicklaus & Company here in Salt Lake City, we've been here for 85 years. We're pretty rooted in this community. People see our trucks everywhere. There is a lot of awareness already. When we moved to Las Vegas, nobody knew who we were. All of a sudden, we're trying to explain, they haven't even seen our trucks. They don't, so you walk in the door and you say, hey, come buy from me. And they're like, who are you? I don't even, know. I don't even know who you are. Are you a Mickey Mouse operation? You can't handle my business. So there's this process that we take our customers through in terms of creating the awareness, getting them to consider purchasing from us, figuring out if they intend to make a move. Will they purchase from us, and then will they become loyal, and then will they become a raving fan? That's really the goal. At the end of the day is for us to have long-term partnerships where they become raving fans. We teach our sales reps also that there are different kinds to really kind of assess what type of customer are you going after. My father-in-law used to always say, every customer is the best customer. And really, you have a finite amount of resources. And focusing your efforts, your time, your energy, your resources on the right customers, the right people is so important, especially in a business that is so capital intensive, where the margins are so skinny, the profit is not huge. You really have to be intentional on the customers that, making sure that they're the right customers. We talked about prospects already. So when we hire a new sales rep and they ask, well, how do I get leads? What happens? Where do I go? And you decide you want to go see a customer. The first thing I always tell people is go eat there. Go see, is the food good? Check out the menu. See what kind of products are on there. Understand, do we have those products already? Are they easy to get? Are they already in stock? The favorite thing I always say, one of my favorite things that I always say to our team members is sell what we've got. That's the easiest thing to do. You know it's in stock, you know what the product is, it's consistent, it's there, sell what we've got. So if you're prospecting and you're looking for customers that are all specialty and we don't have any specialty product, it's gonna be hard for you to honor your commitments to that customer to get their products in. Once you meet the customer, this is very standard. You've probably seen, listen more than you talk, right? Ask a lot of questions, but listen, check for understanding, articulate our value proposition, explain why we're different. Why would they want to buy from us versus Cisco or US Food Service, who might be bigger than we are? Why would they want to buy from us versus a specialty distributor? Explaining our value proposition and what makes us different is super important. We actually have a sales methodology that we have at Nicole & Company. We use Miller-Hyman. Have you guys done any work with Miller-Hyman or any other sales methodology training? Okay, I'll talk to you a little bit about that. For us, we decided that we needed some consistency in how we were training our salespeople, and we wanted this consistent go-to-market strategy so that our people that we were training understood how to assess the customer, how to assess their frame of mind, how to assess, and how to get them from that awareness to the purchase to the loyalty, how to kind of walk them through that cycle. So part of the assessment is once you get in and see a customer, trying to decide who is the decision maker in the account, who is the direct user, who's the technical buyer, and who is going to be your advocate, who wants you to get the business. I have a situation right now, we've got an RFP that we're doing for a big customer in Las Vegas, and there is a direct user, which is the chef, and the technical buyer, which is the purchasing agent, and they do not want the same things in their own organization. All of the purchasing agent cares about is the lowest price. What do you think the chef cares about? Quality. So there's a disconnect, and we have to figure out how to get the two of them to connect so that we can be a solution for them. The customer's frame of mind is also really important. Understanding whether the customer you're walking in and whether they're ready to make a change. I mean, let's face it, it's difficult to change. Nobody likes change. I always say this, we're in the middle of an ERP implementation in our company right now, and so change is all around us every single day. I always tell people, how many of you get nervous when you have to change out your phone? How many of you have, you struggle? I wait until the very last second possible before even I do upgrades, because I'm always worried like, oh my gosh, the screen's gonna look different. I'm gonna lose my contacts, whatever. So change is hard for people. So understanding that and trying to make sure that you can tell the story, that you will make the disruption, you will make the change easy for them is really important. If they don't have a reason to leave, they like their current supplier, they're in love with their current supplier, they have a great relationship, it's going to be really hard for you to get your foot in the door. When we talk to customers and find out why did a sales rep fail, these are all the reasons that we get. Sales rep didn't follow up, didn't have good communication, didn't listen, was maybe too pushy, too aggressive. We really see this in different markets as well. You can imagine, when I first started at our company, I actually was in charge of recruiting for a period of time, and we used to do sales profiling. And we had a profile of our most successful salespeople, and we would say, okay, this is the type of personality we're looking for. And it didn't translate in different markets. So the perfect sales profile in Salt Lake City was not the perfect sales profile in Burley, Idaho. So you have to know your market, you have to understand who your customers are and meet your customers where they're at. Certainly, over-promising and under-delivering is a reason that sales reps fail. Not understanding business. This just happened to me about 2 months ago, and so even at a company where we do good training, where we do good things, where I think we have kind of a process that's in place, an Italian restaurant opened up here in town, and the owner said to me, you sent a rep in who said, first thing, I don't really understand Italian food. I've never sold an Italian restaurant, but I'm here. Did she get the business? No. And we still don't have the business. And we're trying now to recover from that first impression. So really interesting. And surprising, because this is a rep actually who's been with us for 10 years and had been at a competitor for another 10 years before. So very seasoned. We always tell our salespeople that retention is a growth strategy too. So it's just as important, instead of always focusing on getting that new business, keeping the business that you have. There's a saying that it takes you years to get a customer and just seconds to lose one. It really is true. You're only as good as your last delivery. In our case, you're only as good as your last order. Really making sure that we show our current customers the love and make sure that they know that it's a partnership. And at Nicole & Company, we have this little word called philotimo that's embedded in our mission, vision, passion statement. And it's a Greek word that doesn't really have an English translation, but we say that it's the secret ingredient in our recipe for success. There's a great YouTube video, if you Google it, called The Greek Secret, and it explains philotimo a little better than I'm about to do, but it basically means the love of honor, the sense of pride and nobility that's enshrined in the Greek culture, and we think at Nicole & Company also. We think this resonates with our customers and our team members, and it's why people want to come to work for Nicole and why people want to partner with us. It's about how we make people feel. It's not about what we do, it's about the feeling. It's this sense of hospitality that is ingrained in us. The sense that we are, as a family business, we have a long-term view of things, long-term partnerships, and we have a legacy, and we want our customers to be part of that, and we want to help them be successful for years to come as well. Has anybody read the book Unreasonable Hospitality? So it came out a little while ago. One of the authors, the author was one of the founders of 11 Madison Park. He was partnered with Danny Myers, Shake Shack, all of that. I think that's probably most familiar to people. But I love this quote: going above and beyond the pursuit of how you make people feel, and that the concept can and should be beyond just the restaurant industry. That really is Philotimo, and at its essence, and that's what we're striving for at Nicklaus & Company. So when people come in and they're applying for a sales position with us, I always say to them, why would you want to be in sales? Why would you want to consider sales? Maybe you've never thought about sales in the food service industry. I mean, a lot of other industries, tech industry, pharmaceutical, people think about that when they're going to school, because they think about how much money they can make, and they think about what kind of a career they can have. They don't typically think of, top of mind, food service sales. Sales is the best way to understand the business. You are frontline with the customers. You get the customer lens, and I would argue that it's the best way to get a seat at the table. If you really are a person who wants to climb the corporate ladder, understanding that customer perspective is key. Our children coming into the business in the 4th generation have to go work in sales at some point in their career, or they will not move up the ladder in our company. And that's it. Any questions?
For questions.
Hi, thank you for being here and telling us about your company. My question goes back to the slide where you talked about the separation in the categories of like the multi-units and education and medical versus individual units. How do you differentiate the companies? Like, we have a Panda Express on campus, or we have like a Starbucks in a grocery store, because I know like my sister works for Starbucks, and that technically doesn't quantify as like a traditional Starbucks if you go in and use your discount, because it's a separate entity, or like franchise versus like McDonald's and things like that. Are those like, do you guys have to separate those as well, or are those kind of all grouped in?
Yeah, so the question was, how do we categorize and separate the different kinds of business entities from territory to non-commercial and multi-unit? Our multi-unit accounts are typically contracted, and their business models are very different. So for example, Burger King is one of our multi-unit accounts that's a national account. We actually have an affiliate organization that we belong to so that we can service national accounts from coast to coast with other independent distributors that are our size or larger. We're actually one of the smaller ones in that group. There aren't very many of us left that are $1 billion and above, because mergers and acquisitions in our industry have gobbled up the smaller players. But we have seamless reporting. We have, through technology, we're able to service a customer. It might be Nicklaus & Company in this geography. It might be Shamrock Foods in another geography. It might be Gordon Food Service in the Midwest. And so we're able to go to that customer and say, we can service you from coast to coast, just like one of the national players. The difference is you're going to get owners who really want to make sure that this is not transactional, that there's a loyalty, that there's long-term partnerships here. The contracts at Burger King are managed through a company called RSI, which is their purchasing arm. So what is consistent is the products are the products, whether it's a Burger King that's in a gas station or whether it's a freestanding Burger King. They have to get Whoppers that are sourced by where they say they get sourced. We don't choose where to buy the Whoppers from. We are told where to buy the Whoppers from and bring them in. And it doesn't matter. They have to have that consistency, whether it's the grocery store, whether it's the convenience store, or whether it's a freestanding unit. Similar to the Starbucks. So franchise rules govern the specs of the product, where the product comes from, depending on that. And obviously, like if it's something like Burger King Whoppers, we can't sell that to anybody else except for to Burger King, right? Starbucks has the same thing. Did that answer that question?
Other questions? Oh, never mind. We have no more time for questions.
Sorry.
But no worries. Thank you so much, Nicole. And then please check your schedules again for your last breakout sessions, which will be starting at 11 a.m.